Congressman Randy Neugebauer of Texas. Welcome, Congressman. Great to see you.
Jerry, great to be on the program again with you.
I have to ask you about Blagojevich because I just mentioned it, and I know you have opinions on what it means more broadly.
Well, I think a lot of people thought he was going to get off scot-free, but I think this jury looked at the evidence and said, you know what, that's unacceptable, and, they spoke. And so I think one of the things that's going on in the country right now, people are kind of tired of the way that some of the people in political life have been behaving, and I think this is another example of that.
Yeah, warning sign for anybody out there who's got their finger in the till. I want to talk to you about the debt limit. That's certainly the big news out of Washington today, that the president really taking on the negotiations here. We've got less than 2 weeks that Congress is going to be in business to act on any of this. I want you to react to something Mitch McConnell said on the Sunday morning shows. Listen to Mitch McConnell.
I think we've gotten to the point where we ought to put aside our talking points and get down to what can actually pass. As I was just trying to point out to you, the whole business of raising taxes, regardless of how you go about it, is something that this Congress is not likely to do.
Well, a spending problem. I know Republicans are on message about that, but they sure don't seem to be talking about compromise.
Well, I think, Jerry, what we've been talking about is we do have a spending problem. We don't have an income problem. And, one of the things that you mentioned is the president's been absent from this debate from the very beginning. He sent a budget over, then he sent his what we call the Mulligan budget over, because the first one was a spend and borrow.
The Mulligan budget?
And then he sent a budget over, and it was defeated in the House. And more importantly, it was voted down 97-0 in the Senate. And the president has not wanted to put his fingerprints on any of these discussions because these are tough decisions. These are tough times, and to fix this budget, really tough decisions and tough solutions are going to have to be reached. And the president's in the campaigning mode, and he's decided to. But unfortunately, he realizes that the vice president was not able to make any progress in this.
Right.
He's going to step up and hopefully show some leadership.
There were rumblings out today that maybe the president was floating some tax hikes. How's that going to go over?
I think it's a non-starter in the House, particularly with Republicans, because we are on message, and not because it's a message, but because it's the truth. I haven't met anybody that thinks that the government doesn't tax enough, but I have met a lot of Americans that think that the Congress spends too much money, and so we're going to have to address that issue.
The thing that confounds me is I don't understand why it's taken the president so long to come to the table. You mentioned the budget he brought before, the Mulligan budget, you called it. It was sort of largely ignored, not really paid attention to. Why has the president been absent?
Well, because these are going to be tough conclusions that we're going to have to come to, Jerry. And so, obviously, if you want to, he's trying to run for re-election. And when you start talking about some of the entitlement programs, when you start talking about, having to make some fairly major cuts in some areas of government that have been the kind of the linchpin for the Democratic Party, it's going to be tough. And the president doesn't want to have to address those. But he's the president of the United States, and he needs to be at the table.
Well, amen to that. I want to show you a poll, results of a poll. Folks were asked, should the debt ceiling be raised? No, 41%. Yes, 38%. Look, I think I just flipped them. I was right. Okay, no, 41%. Yes, 38%. People are really close together. I mean, there's no clear response, really. That's within the margin of error. What do you make of that? Well,
it's basically a third, a third, and a third. And the other part of it, Jerry, is a third of the people just don't know what to do. And why? Well, because the American people are very concerned about the future of this country. And they're hearing a lot of rhetoric about if we do, if we don't. But one thing's very clear. If you ask them, do we need to do something to move this country in a better direction, start creating jobs, reduce the deficit, everybody's united behind that. Everybody has a different opinion on how to get there. But by and large, I think when you ask people, they're just very concerned about the direction of the country and how's the best way for us to get there.
Well, and I guess we'll be debating that for some time to come, and certainly intensively over the next 2 weeks. Congressman, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.